It's a blueprint, a rubric, a guiding light to meet deadlines. It's formulaic to these chords, so give us more of the norm. Come along, it's formulaic.
I'm Shelby.
And I'm the businessman who's going to take down this podcast network before Christmas.
Oh no, whatever will we do? What if we find love and conquer all before then?
And of course, the love will be Nicole.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're the big businessman and Nicole's the up-and-coming store owner trying to, or podcast network owner trying to just make her way.
She has a brick-and-mortar podcast network.
She has a brick-and-mortar podcast building. I feel like we're already writing this.
Fudge. Is that... Oh, no. I had some ideas, but that's so much funnier.
I know. I literally wrote down, high-powered blank returns to hometown just in time for a blank contest.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a podcast contest.
Guys... We're doing it finally. We are writing a Hallmark Lifetime-style holiday movie.
We're doing it. It's a rom-com. Y'all know I've had a rom-com waiting to be written. Just in every single pocket, in every single article of clothing that I own, there's a rom-com waiting to be pulled out.
And this isn't... I have ideas for other rom-coms, but it wouldn't fit. 1 Year Gator, we could eventually do 1 Year Gator at holidays or something. The Christmas 1 Year Gator. Something of that ilk, yes. But that isn't what we're doing. Hallmark and Lifetime have a set kind of vibe. And how do I know this, R2? I think I watched like 10 in preparation for this today.
Hell yeah. I watched 5, but I have a long history of watching rom-coms and Hallmark rom-coms, so I feel pretty prepared.
You've watched a single rom-com minimum for the last almost 200 weeks.
That's true. That's true. It's almost like 4 years I've been doing It is 4 years I've been doing a rom-com podcast.
4 more years. 4 more years.
Re-elect the rom-complex.
Okay, I want to give a quick rundown of the movies I watched in preparation for this. Fred Orlean Ray, one of my favorite directors. He did All I Want for Christmas, and what one was this? That's that's Cheerleader Chainsaw Chicks. That's not a Christmas movie. A Wedding Christmas Day. Shelby watched it. You loved it.
I did. It was a time loop. You know I love a time loop. I canonically love time loops.
Hell yeah. You love that Santa Maria.
Palm
Springs. There we go.
I do.
Holiday in Handcuffs, the classic.
Covered that on Rom-Complex.
Then Fur Crazy, loved that one.
I didn't watch that one. Was it a tree decorating thing?
Her family, of course, owns a Christmas tree farm, so she's a big power lawyer type or manager advertisement, but loses her job right before. But hey, you have a nice severance check. And then after her family's like, hey, could you help us? You live in New York City, and that's where we sell our trees in a lot. And Colin Mockery's in it as the bad guy. It fucking ruled. I
might watch that just on my own, just for fun.
Then I watched An Ice Sculptor Christmas, which is a chef. Oh, I want to be a chef. My mom always wanted me to be one, but for some weird reason, chefs, I guess, can also ice sculpt in this world.
Yeah. This character was really stoked about becoming a chef so that she could carve ice sculptures, which I didn't realize was a big part of chefing.
Mm-hmm. And it's on HBO Max. It is a deconstruction of Hallmark movies. It's like, this is how Nicole described it. As Scream is to horror movies, this is to Hallmark movies. A Hollywood Christmas. It's on Max. It's very good.
All right. Sounds good. You know I love to watch rom-coms.
And then what is this movie? The House on Sorority Row? No. Sound of Christmas sucked. Catch a Christmas Star sucked even more.
It sucked so bad.
Oh, man.
That was the first one I watched, and I was like, woof.
Ice Sculptor Christmas. So it's very weird that there aren't any R-rated movies of this ilk, like either raunchy sex comedies that are also Christmas. There's a market for that. But they are so not just sexless, but the romance also doesn't like get me going at all, except Ice Sculptor Christmas. I'm like, I could see these two. I was wondering, why aren't they fucking? This is crazy.
That's wild because, like you said, all these Hallmark movies are purposely sexless. They're very Christian. You could tell they're like very surface level. There's no exploration of anything deep in these movies because that's not what people are looking for in a Hallmark rom-com. They don't want to think and feel. They want to feel a nice warm fuzzy when two people understand each other and kiss. And that's it.
I want to see Lloyd Kaufman and Troma take a shot at these movies, do like what their 4 sex romps that they did in the 70s and 80s, like a first turn on. I want to see that, but for Hallmark movies.
Well, there are some raunchy holiday movies. I'm thinking of like The Holiday, which sucks.
Christmas is canceled.
Christmas is canceled, yeah. Another nice little quote-unquote raunchy Christmas comedy.
So what we're doing today is writing one of those. However, people are like, oh, they're going to do a full movie. I want to do like if Full Moon Features had done one of these. Or there are some movies on like Roku and Tubi that you'll get 10 minutes of credits and then 62 minutes of a script. And I think that's what we need to do. We're not going to shoot for the fences, get 90 minutes. I think we want 60 and that'll be good.
Well, I think what we should do is tell our story, get our story together and tell our story. And then however long it is, that's how long it is.
Oh, Hamlet's always talking about that. Who lives, who dies, who tells Hallmark stories?
Hamlet is talking about
Yeah. I just quoted a Hamlet line. Hamilton, fuck. Shit.
Hamlet is like to be or not to be.
To be or not to be a high-powered businessman or to live in a downtown home.
Beautiful. I'm excited to write this. As you know, I'm a big rom-com fan, and I've recently started to fall back in love with love. I was bitter about it
on Netflix
for a brief time. Yes, I actually have never seen the show Love on Netflix. I saw the first few episodes. I've heard it's very good. I do like Paul Rust. What a silly, goofy boy.
Oh, man, he's so good. Saw Don't Stop or We'll Die live in concert, but unfortunately, the Sloppy Boys opened, and you can't do that. The Sloppy Boys, no matter what band you are, you cannot follow the Sloppy Boys.
Love the Sloppy Boys. I did stand up on a show with Mike Hanford once. Actually, twice, because I had him on my show. He's such a sweetie. I don't know the other Sloppy Boys, but Mike's a really nice guy.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, we're going to write a rom-com. So like I said, did you like write out a formula? Or is it more like the basic kind of, like I said, high-powered blank lawyer, producer, who cares? They usually get fired and they have to return to their hometown. Oh no, there's an ex there. The ex probably has a kid. Someone always has a kid, an entirely too precocious child that they have deliver way too many lines. And usually someone has a dead mom.
Yeah.
And there's some kind of contest and there's like a deadline and these two people have to work together and fall in love and win the contest.
Or it's a big powered person has to go home to secure some deal, and within that, it affects the love interest's business, and then through, like, this push and pull, they end up falling in love, and then the man's like, I actually don't want to destroy your business. I have this weird way in which we can solve this problem, like in Sound of Christmas.
Perfect. Yeah, and then they work together and they solve the whole problem. They solve each other's problems. There's usually very little conflict. It just takes time for them to figure out that they can just work together.
Well, we always have like the initial catalyst conflict, and then the second conflict is just a slight misunderstanding, and the other's like, oh, you actually have a boyfriend or girlfriend already? Oh, no. And they don't talk it out. They just leave.
They just make assumptions and then leave, as you do. You know, when you find out someone has a boyfriend and they never told you, you're like, huh, I guess they never brought that up because they were purposely were like withholding it from me, and not, maybe I'm perceiving this wrong.
Or maybe I'm the boyfriend and the other person's a side piece. Oh, I feel loved.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love when my partner has a side piece.
But they were the first, and then they came to me. I'm the better one, and now, like, I'm the actual boyfriend.
Yeah, I mean, anything that happens before, I mean, in my opinion, stuff that happens with someone and other people before you get together, that's none of my business.
Yeah.
That is not my business.
And if it's still happening, guess what? It started beforehand, so it's still none of my business.
Right, if I date someone and they are already dating if I'm dating someone and they're married, like, that's none of my business. That happened before I got together, has nothing to do with me.
I put my head in the sand like an ostrich, and they just pound me like I'm an ostrich with their head in the sand.
Never mind. We're gonna move on from that image. So I was thinking, I love this. Did you have any ideas you wanted to cycle through, or are we set with this brick and mortar podcast building that the high-powered podcast producer?
Yes, I do like that. I do have, however, ideas of casting, because we're now, how far into this? We're like 12 episodes, 13 episodes in. We kind of have a stable of voice actors.
We do.
So I want to kind of, before even writing, think of specific formulaic all-stars to plug in these stereotypical tropes.
Well, I'll tell you, Sam of the Rom Complex has been wanting to play a lead in a Hallmark rom com for decades.
So my first note is Sam hyphen the lead, obviously. So we're already on there. Corwin, I reached out and he said he wanted something funny, but also something that he could raise the stakes. So either we make him the straight lead because he's like, okay, well, I guess I have to play straight now. That seems like it raises the stakes. Or I think the better idea would be they're the business partner who will eventually conflict with our male lead to be like, no, I don't care about love. I'm still going to keep plowing through with this deal. Be hazed.
Okay, so you want Corwin cast as like the kind of overbearing business partner.
Yeah.
Who's like kind of evil.
I don't have any ideas for the male lead, though, I don't think.
Oh, we'll find someone.
All right.
I mean, we've got Goose von Kaiser.
Well,
we've got...
My next note is Sean and Torchy will be the boss, the mayor, the Christmas committee, and the assistant, because you always have something like that. It's like a duo always playing off from each other, or even like the parents of one of them. Lincoln Bio, just the sweetie nephew of the female lead, because you're like, there's always a kid, and I already had that written down. Dro should be our secret Santa. There's always I guess this person is really Santa, are they? Well, yeah, they are. Mars could be the overtly ambitious friend of Sam's lead.
Or the, like, grandmother or something. Because usually there's, like, a family member.
Grandfather for Mars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, either one.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I like it being a grandfather opposed to parents.
Yeah, because usually there's a dead parent.
And now we got two.
Oh, we could give them all of their parents are dead.
What is this, Toei's Spider-Man?
Does Toei Spider-Man, doesn't Spider-Man usually have dead parents?
So in Toei Spider-Man, whenever you meet a child, you're like, okay, they're going to have just a single parent. Yes, they have a single parent. And at the end of the episode, either the child's going to die or the parent is going to die, leaving that kid an orphan without fail.
Wait, they kill off kids?
Yeah. There was one time a kid got hit by a car and almost died, but he got pumped full of Spider-Man's blood, so he ended up being okay. But technically, he died for a little bit.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds great. You know what? Something that happened. Okay, so who did we get for the kid? Oh, Lincoln Bio. Maybe I saw a few of them where like the kid is just like obsessed with superheroes or something.
Ooh.
And is just like super into it. So maybe we could have Lincoln Bio being this precocious kid who's just like talking about all the superheroes.
Okay, so what happens is our lead has a fledgling podcast network. So she's trying to find like something big, like, oh, what can be our serial? What's our next big thing? And how it ends is the precocious nephew is like, well, I've always loved superheroes. Here's some, like, I'm writing my own comic book. And they're like, well, this story's great. We could turn this into an audio play. And that's what makes them hit big. And it's like Christmas Man or something.
Yeah, okay, so the high-powered producer, like the male lead, because most Hallmark movies, they're straight. Like, they're extremely straight.
Oh, yeah.
There was one I watched where the sister was gay, and it's like, yeah!
In Hollywood, or not Hollywood in Handcuffs, Holiday in Handcuffs, the brother ends up being gay.
Right, so it's like, yeah, we could have a side character be gay. But no, the male lead got fired, or... Are we going to have the male lead be? Yeah, let's do it. So the male lead gets fired from their big podcast network job. And they're like, you know what? That's fine. I can go out on my own. And they have to go home for the holidays or whatever because they've lost their job and everything. So they get home immediately. They're like, there's this brick and mortar podcast shop. I'm going to take it all the way. And like... Then they meet the female lead, and they are like enemies at first.
Actually, instead of him being in the podcast sector, we need instant conflict. He is in the radio sector, so there's already like, well, these fucking podcasters put me out of business.
Yeah, okay, so it'll be like opening with like he's getting fired because they're like, these podcasts, we just can't keep up with them. Sorry, we gotta let you go from radio station.
In Chicago, and he has to go back to, do we want to do New Jersey, Florida, or Muskegon, Michigan?
Well, I mean, we've done Muskegon, and
Many times.
More familiar with Florida than New Jersey just because of the years I spent there. I was older in Florida, so we could do Florida, a nice little holiday Christmas, bring in the palm trees with the Christmas lights and stuff.
Yeah, so actually maybe he's from Miami or he's from Clearwater because, you know, that's where all radio technically has gone to be vacuumed of any creativity. And he's fired from Clearwater, then has to, what's like a kind of smaller, maybe Kissimmee?
Kissimmee, yeah, Kissimmee would work, or we could go like Titusville.
Okay.
Like some really shitty place. Titusville is in the county where I grew up, and it's where Tosh Point oh is from.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that's also where Daniel Tosh is from.
It is where Daniel Tosh is from. So shout out Titusville. The Titusville Terriers is their high school team, but the mascot was definitely a bulldog.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Okay, so he's from Kissimmee. Or not from Kissimmee. I guess from Kissimmee.
Or
was
he's from
in Clearwater.
Titusville.
Yeah. And then canceled from Clearwater and then comes back and and I think the lead and him went up together in broadcasting in high school, maybe in the AV club. And then
they were in the AV club together.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
she's like, "Oh man, there's this thing I've been listening to this show Never Not Funny. It's podcasting, like this is the new shit." And he's like, "No, dude, you're not going to make any money there. It's all about the green fat dollars." And then he goes into radio and she keeps on podcasting and she's doing okay for herself. She's got like 5,000 listeners a week. That's great. But she wants to expand. She wants that next big thing. Oh my God, what will happen?
Well, it's not even the next big thing. I'm thinking she's like, okay, we have these podcasts in our network that people are passionate about. We've got, Mrs. Holmes from down the street does her little gardening show, her little gardening podcast. It's like, think of like public access little shows, but it's their on her podcast network. And she's like, but we don't have any like true crime stuff. We don't have a big, narrative podcast. We don't have some other thing. They just have like little whatever. What's popular in the wrestling podcast?
Okay, well, it's
like we don't have a wrestling podcast.
It's not popular, okay? I would say you have also paranormal mixed in with the true crime.
Okay, so I'm thinking maybe she's got this little podcast network. where she produces these podcasts for people as like little kind of vanity projects in her podcast network. And this is, how she gets by, but she doesn't make a lot of money from it. She also has like a job at a cafe or something.
Well, wait.
Maybe she's like about to lose her house or something because her mom's dead, obviously.
I think because it's a brick and mortar podcast network, maybe she's like, I have it's half cafe and half recording studios. The cafe's doing so much better. Like, should I just, and maybe someone comes in and is like, hey, I would love to help you expand. Just like take out all of this recording equipment. You could make this the cafe in town.
Perfect. Yes. So she's considering getting rid of the podcast portion of the building, but that she's got this like little old lady who does her gardening podcast and this group of teens who does a little paranormal investigation podcast, and like someone else in town does another thing, and she would feel really bad to like get rid of that space for them because it's very important for the community. So she doesn't really want to do that, but expanding the cafe is what would get her the money she needs to pay for her grandpa's illnesses.
There's a podcast that is trying to find, where's Titusville, Central Florida?
Yeah.
So it's a podcast that is actively trying to seek out the best nachos and fried rice in Central Florida. This is a podcast idea I wish I had the money to do.
So you just go everywhere with nachos and fried rice and you're trying to find...
Nacho or fried rice.
Okay.
I'd call it the Golden Crust because it's like the Golden Coast. It would be a food podcast in general.
But that's not... The East Coast of Florida is the Space Coast, actually.
No, I'm saying I literally have this idea for Chicago that I would like to
do. Got it. I was like, that's not Florida.
And real quick, maybe the thing that really sets this in motion is the school comes in, like someone, maybe her friend works for the school and is like, hey, we're looking for more AV equipment. You used to do that. Like, really, is this doing the stuff you want it to do? Just donate it. Do it. You could write off so much on taxes if you just donate it to the school. So in the back of her mind, she's like, hey, maybe that's the thing I need to do.
So maybe how this all gets resolved, right, is that the male lead gives up on his radio dreams and buys her the podcast portion of the cafe.
Oh, yeah.
And it becomes like their network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we know what she's up to. She's like struggling to she's not struggling with bills because we don't want it to be that big. I don't think she should be losing a house. It should just be like her ambition is stuck and she remembers, oh, this fling I had, he's doing all big and whatnot. Oh, he's coming back into town and he's not going to tell anyone that he was fired. He's just going back. He meets his parents. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to like go this and that. And maybe the mom also works at the school. So he goes there and sees the friend, the love interest's friend. And then, should we start naming them?
Yeah.
Okay. Nicole said we need to give them holiday specific names like, the mom who's a teacher should be like
Mary, spelled Merry.
Well, I was gonna say her name like is Linda Toe, but it's shortened to Miss L Toe. Miss L
Toe. That's hilarious.
So maybe our lead is like Lynn Toe.
Well, someone's got to have a dead mom. I'm just saying, like if we're going Hallmark formula, like. A mom is dead.
Okay, all right. Maybe then this mom is the only mom in the entire town and all the other moms are dead.
Yeah, or our male lead, maybe his mom's dead. And like his mom died while he was in high school, and that's part of the reason he moved out and focused on radio stuff and making money and everything.
Hell yeah.
Because he was hurt.
So he meets up with Miss L Toe and he's like, she says, oh, have you seen Lynn yet? And he's like, oh, no, I haven't spoken with her since, I moved on to bigger and better things. And she says, oh, I just always thought you two were so cute together. Oh, I love you so much. And what's his Christmas themed name?
Let's see. We've got trees. It could be Ferdinand, but it starts with F-I-R.
Okay, all right.
F-E-R.
No, that's just, it's so long. And
No, I know. Nicholas.
Okay.
Nicholas is always a...
But we end up wanting or maybe he's the one with the grandfather and his grandfather's maybe Santa.
Yeah, or it could be, since we have a cafe, maybe there's just like a guy who works at the cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Who is actually Santa Claus.
I guess his name could be Noel.
Yeah, or Leon, because it's Noel backwards.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. That's catchier.
So that would be Santa's name, or?
No, that's the dude's name.
That's the dude's name. Okay,
Yes.
so we've got Leon. I'm going to jot down some notes. Leon and Lynn.
Yeah. And then Noel Holy. No.
Noel.
Oh, Leon. Oh, why not just Leon Noel? Make it a Palomino.
Yeah, I think I know someone online named Leon Noel.
Uh-oh.
That's funny. No, they're in there now. Okay, so I'm thinking the way that we would start out, like the first scene, would be Leon getting fired.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so maybe his boss is just kind of, or he's like, oh, you wanted to see me? And then his boss is like, we've been up against the podcasting world for a long time and blah, blah, blah. And he's just like going on, and Leon's kind of confused. Like, what are you talking about? And Leon's like, yeah, we have this plan in place. We're ready to go. I'm got all this. And they're like, actually, we made some decisions without you. We're going to have to let you go. But listen, there's a great severance package.
Oh, yeah. And he's like, no, but all these good ideas and Mr. Let's just call him Scrooge.
Sure. Yeah. Same Scrooge.
Scrooge Clearwater. And
And he lives in Clearwater.
yeah, well, no, he's part of the Clearwater fortune.
You're right. He's the Clearwater radio family.
And he's saying, there's just this radio stuff. We need to make cuts and just do the bare minimum. We can't keep up with these podcasters, all these Mark Pardos, Jimmy Holmes, Scott, list any other popular podcast, James. Scott Doughboy.
Scott Doughboy.
I don't know.
Podcast The Ackerman.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, and Leon's like, wait, but what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? And his boss is like, it's the holidays. Go home to your family.
And he says, I don't have one, you know this. And he says, sorry, kid, I'm already on to counting money. And then he's just like counting money. Maybe he says within the dialogue, Leon says, but I need a job. I just put down a down payment on a home. Like, I make a good $120 a year. And then at the end, he's like, I'm already moving on to bigger and better things, kid. And he's just like counting $120,000 in cash.
Yeah, he's like, I got this whole paycheck back in my pocket. Fantastic.
This is why they call me a CEO.
So Leon's like, he's got to go home. He's like, I got to go back to Titusville. Our lead, he's kind of like ambitious. He's like, no, I won't let this get me down. There's got to be something in Titusville. You know what? Titusville is ripe for a radio industry.
Or he could be talking to other connects, like, maybe I can go to Los Angeles, Kiss FM, or I can go to Muskegon, Michigan, or Grand Rapids, Michigan, 104.5 WSNX.
Yeah, and he calls them, and they're all like, podcasts.
They're
we
like,
can't hire anybody.
All these Scott Doughboys.
All the Scott Doughboys.
He said, if you can get Scott Doughboy on our network, on our radio station, then you got the job. And he's like, they're making too much money on Memberful.
So he decides to go home to Titusville. So that'll be like our opening. We've got this guy. Now we've got to meet, or we probably want to follow him. Oh, no, let's switch over. Now we're at the cafe. We're working at the cafe. Christmas is coming up. We're introducing this podcast building. It's in Titusville and cafe.
Uh-huh.
Santa Claus is there. Maybe Lynn is talking to her mom, Miss Elto. And her mom's like, did you hear Leon Noel's back in town? I can't believe it. You two were so cute together.
And she says, yeah, maybe we were cute together. Because there's generally like the mom thinking they're such a great relationship, and then the child saying like, yeah, looks can be deceiving, stuff like that.
Right. Because he like totally ghosted her, you know? He got kind of mean after his mom died, which, fair.
No, not fair.
I'd be ecstatic. I'm kidding. I don't even want to finish that sentence.
Shout out to our $10 patrons.
Uh-huh. My mother.
So, the womb in which you emerged. So that's when maybe the she's getting a bunch of calls. Like she's getting called. Like her grandpa's like, my toe hurts or something. And
why?
I don't know. Well, because we have to sense that she's under pressure. She's got a lot of stress going on.
Okay.
So maybe we see like the old lady leave with her gardening stuff, and then at the cafe while she's working and all of the stressful stuff is going on, that's when someone comes in and is like, hey, I could if you want to, you know, have you ever thought about selling this part of the cafe? Like, here's my business card or whatever.
Yeah, it's her friend, male or female, what's her best friend?
I mean, we could oh, no, we love a gay best friend. It's a Hallmark rom com. We gotta put a gay best friend in there.
All right, but is gay or lesbian? Pansexual?
We could just do kind of a gender neutral name and then figure out what happens. So maybe something like Tree. Non-binary people love to be named Tree.
Or Chris.
Chris is good. Yeah, Chris.
Let's do Tree.
Tree.
You maniac.
Tree is the main Isn't the main character in Happy Death Day named Tree?
I've seen both those movies. I would have remembered if one was named Tree.
I haven't seen any of them. I did read the plot synopsis on Wikipedia. I'm pretty sure the main character's name is Tree.
Why would you bring up a movie you haven't experienced?
Because I read the plot.
Okay. I'm currently thinking of titles for this movie. I forgot, like, that's a big thing.
Oh, yeah. So it would have to be something really stupid. Usually it has, like, Christmas or holiday in the title.
Uh-huh. I was thinking, like, an RSS Christmas, a Hot Mic Christmas, Christmas in the Cans.
Yeah. Oh, Christmas in the Cans is so good because it's, like, headphones. Christmas in the Cans.
Okay.
I love that.
All right, I sent those 3 in our chat.
Thank you. So we've got her. We were setting up this, and she's like, I don't know. I don't want to see. I don't care if he's back in town. I don't really want to see him. She's got a lot going on.
So much going on.
So he's got to get home. He runs into his dad, who's like not very helpful. He's staying with his dad, who's like kind of a maybe curmudgeonly
No,
guy.
I think the dad should be like, he's moved on from the mom and from, you know, the rebound and the rebound and the rebound and the rebound.
Okay, so he's the kind of guy who just wears robes all day and
yeah,
is like...
he's a poon hound.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Okay, we love this.
If I know anything about Titusville, the 2 people I know from that area are poon hounds.
Wait, who do you know from that area?
I know you and Daniel Tosh.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was making sure those were... I was like, am I counted in there? Because
Yes.
I sure hope so.
I want to be a poon hound.
I want to be a poon hound. No, I couldn't. I
You're
require an
not a
emotional
poon
connection. I'm
hound.
so sorry.
No, you don't. Not when it comes to poon.
You don't know me. I do. Okay, so we've got, you know, this setup, but there has to be some kind of like big event that they're working towards. So maybe they have to do some kind of like Christmas radio show.
Okay, I like that. Well, first, he needs to come to the cafe. Maybe he's going through his father's stuff. He's used to drinking a hot espresso every morning. And he's like, Dad, where's all your shit? And he says, man, don't need caffeine when you're getting much poon as I am. That keeps me up all night. And then
he uses sex like a psychedelic.
Uh-huh. And so, yeah, guys, we're getting a little raunchy. It's fine. That's our style.
When we write it in, it'll just be kind of vague jokes that aren't too, Yeah.
It won't be poon. It'll be
No.
when I
no.
get that sweet nectar of heavenly yoni.
When you love the ladies like I do,
Oh, there you
don't
go.
need an extra pick-me-up.
See, one of us has watched a rom-com for 200 weeks. I, on the other hand, watch just degenerate horror movies.
Well, in my everyday life, I'm often you know how horny I am online. Like I'm saying like ridiculous stuff online. When I'm in person, I have to learn how to say that stuff without it being too gross. So,
I should probably do that because Nicole would probably appreciate that.
it's just, you're in mixed company. You don't know.
Yeah.
Some people can't handle the kinds of jokes that I make with my comedy friends.
Okay. I shouldn't just be saying, "Oh, I want that sweet nectar of the yoni."
People will be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Nicole hates that word yoni.
I only know it in the context of the egg.
Well, I mean, the yoni in tantric sex terminology is the vagina.
That makes sense. I'm not thinking about fucking scientific stuff. I'm thinking about the magic of pleasure.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you know it scientifically, you'll get to that pleasure quicker
That's true.
and more efficiently.
Okay, so wait, what were we talking about?
Okay, so he's like, "Oh, Dad, you don't have coffee." And he's
Yes.
like, "Oh, there's a cafe down the street." And of course, he doesn't know Lynn Toe works there because this dad is just face deep in it all the time, even back in high school.
Yeah, he doesn't know the names of anyone else in town. Except for the women he's slept with.
And only when he's currently sleeping with them.
He forgets, yeah.
He does that Sherlock Holmes mind palace thing where like you have to like push through things in order to remember efficiently. So like
Yeah.
he's just the attic window is constantly opening and he's just dumping out trash every other week.
That's what I did in school after every test I took.
Oh yeah.
Just like, I got all that knowledge, now I can forget it immediately.
See ya.
So anyway,
yes.
he goes there. He sees all this podcasting equipment, and he's like, what is this? Like, he's like upset that it's all podcasting. He's like disgusted.
Well, I think at first he's like, "Wait, holy shit. Do they have a radio station here?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't need to be living the high class, high cost of living life. I can come back home and do this up nice." And he's like, "Oh, excuse me," ringing the bell. And then out from, maybe before he walks in, Lynn takes an order and like all the pennies fall on the ground. So she's picking those up and he's like ringing the bell and she's like, "Hold on," then comes up, "Oh my God, it's Leon. Oh, Lynn, looking like a snack." And then she's like, what are you doing here?" And he's like, points at his head and he's like, tired. And I don't know.
I'm Eepy.
He says, "You know my dad. His sort of pick-me-up is with lines, not coffee."
Jesus. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I remember when he did that stint in jail when you were in middle school."
No, I don't mean cocaine lines. I mean pickup lines, like to hit on women.
Right. So they're chatting and he finds out that it's like podcasting stuff. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you're like doing really great in radio, right? In Clearwater, like last I heard." And he's like, "Yeah, just home for the holidays. I've been thinking about starting out on my own or whatever." And she's like, "Oh yeah, that's great. It's so, I run my little podcast network and my brick and mortar podcast."
And she says, "It's hard work, but at the end of the day, it's yourself. It's 100% you. And that's where the gratification comes."
Yeah, she's like, "I've built a community and that's, more important to me than the paychecks." And meanwhile, he's just like, "Podcast, so you're not making any money from this." And he's kind of like judgy about it.
And she says, "Well, we have some sponsors. And he says, "What's the cafes called? Like, what's a podcast term that starts with a C, like calf?"
Instead of pot of coffee. It's pot of coffee.
Oh, okay. He says, is it just pot of coffee? And she says, well, what can I get for you? Like, that's the only sponsor they have is her cafe.
Yeah, right. We have a sponsor. Yeah.
I have a sponsor. Is it the Darling Homebody Shopping Network? Oh, moving on.
Yeah, we've got cross-sponsorship opportunities of Marshland Media and Rom Complex.
Uh-huh.
So they have this kind of weird interaction. It's uncomfortable, and they both feel kind of off about it, but it's clearly his fault. He's the one who's like being kind of a jerk.
Mm-hmm. And I think the Santa Claus is a cafe regular. I think that.
Okay.
And then when he leaves, Santa says some sort of old fling or is that what you want for Christmas?
Like, I sense some kind of history there. Care to share? And then maybe she won't even answer. Maybe her friend's there at that point. Her friend's like, oh my gosh, they were like inseparable in high school until his mom died. And, he like separated himself from us.
And then the friend says, is that what you wanted for Christmas? And she said, yeah, him leaving my store.
That's good. And I also, something about these rom-coms, these Hallmark rom-coms, is they end really abruptly.
Oh,
and a lot of scenes will end very abruptly because it's like time for commercial break. Mm-hmm. So we could definitely build that in there too. So after they have this kind of first tense interaction, right? He's got to go, but she's going on with her life. I think we should follow her for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe she goes home. She's we see what life is like for her at home. She got
starts
grandpa.
showering.
She's got her. Yeah, what? Why did I say yeah so quickly? She's got her grandpa, and he's there being like, whatever. She takes care of him. It's nice. And maybe grandpa has some stuff that he like wants to buy or whatever. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, grandpa, maybe next year we can go on that vacation you really wanted to go on or whatever.
Where's like you know how Jersey City is to like Las Vegas or to like even New York City? What is, you have Orlando and Miami. Those are like the big attractions. What's like the second tier attraction place in Florida?
Like Tampa.
Okay, then like, yeah, she says like, oh wait, no, Petersburg.
St. Pete. Yeah, I mean,
St. Pete.
Tampa, St. Pete is like the same area.
Oh, okay, then
St.
yeah.
Pete would be good. St. Petersburg.
Let's just say we'll have to hold off on going to St. Pete next year.
Yeah, and Grandpa's like, I don't know how many more Christmases I've got in me. And she's like, Grandpa, don't say that. You're going to live forever.
Say, your father is still alive. We all live unnaturally long.
Yeah, it like cuts over and there's an even smaller, older man next to him. It's her great grandpa.
Or it pans out and we see like, I feel like anywhere in Florida you can see a tennis court.
Absolutely.
I think it's just this very elderly man just like still like trotting along on the tennis court. It's like, you guys are healthy. Shut up.
You're going to be fine. Don't try to guilt me, Grandpa. And, and she's like, I did get an interesting offer today. And she'll tell him, we'll hear her be uncomfortable about the idea of selling the podcast studio. She doesn't want to do that.
Not selling it. It will be a tax write-off because it goes to the school.
Expanding the cafe.
Yeah.
It'll go to the school. Right.
And then the grandfather's like, oh, yeah, it would be like giving back to where you came from, and, just give up on your dreams a little. Also, like, you have a successful business.
Right? Like, why don't you just keep focusing on your cafe? Do you really have to do everything?
You could be having days off if you didn't run that podcast network. And also, tell those teens to stop coming around here. As you said, we aren't going to die.
I'm not a ghost. I'm alive.
Come on. I know when my dad's scamping around outside at night, yeah, he looks a little ghoulish, but we're not paranormal activities.
So she's like, okay, I'll tell them again. Then I think maybe we're back to Leon. So he's doing his stuff, and he's like, we're seeing him, he's like seeing all the stuff he hates about Titusville. Like he's like, the high school, the Titusville Terriers, their mascot's a bulldog. What the hell? It's all flat. Everything's flat. Daniel Tosh is here. People hate it.
No.
You can't do something stupid without Daniel Tosh making a video about it.
There we go. That's better. We stand Daniel Tosh here as an interviewer.
Staniel Tosh.
Oh, yeah.
So, so then he's like, okay, maybe he'll try like listening to some of the podcasts on the radio station. Mm-hmm. Or maybe his dad listens to them or something.
Oh, wait. Yes, because maybe there's a dating one.
I love that.
Someone, maybe the friend, the teacher, she has one that's like, hey, here's some date ideas, or here's a coming and goings of dating here in Titusville.
Right. And then so like the intro outro of the podcast is, Lynn doing her little spiel for like Pot of Coffee. This podcast is brought to you by Pot of Coffee, a local Titusville podcast network or whatever. Mm-hmm. and he hears it and he's like, oh, that actually sounds pretty good. Decent sound quality and stuff. I'm kind of impressed.
I think when he's like, hey, we could do this. We know Daniel Tosh is in town for the holidays. Let's try and get him for like a big episode of it. Yes. It Titus a village, like it takes a village. Maybe they have like an overarching just Titus. It's Titusville.
Yeah.
It takes a Titus village. That's the thing I was trying to say.
It takes a Titus village.
That's like their mostly speaking Sentai, their comedy bang bang. That is the thing that started the network and defines it. And they're like, we could get Tosh on for an interview for the holidays that will put us over the top.
And they're like, oh, but we don't have that pull to get Tosh.0 here.
Oh, but
I know it's a local Titusville thing, but he's a professional. We have to pay him.
But you want to know who would have connections to stand-ups who travel?
Yes.
Radio stations, because morning radio always has these stand-ups on at 5 a.m.
Of course. So Leon actually has Daniel Tosh's phone number.
Uh-huh.
But we don't know this yet. Like, this is stuff that we can see as the audience pulling together, but the characters will not know these things yet about each other. Because they don't know that what they're working toward is Leon is going to use his severance to fund this, to go in on this podcast network, get Daniel Tosh in, and it's going to blow it up.
Yeah. I don't think he needs to spend money on this. I think he just needs to pull all his favors and maybe a little bit of money to like go to the country club that Daniel Tosh. You want to know what's crazy about Daniel Tosh? His first album went diamond. And that there's like 4 people on like credits. Like it's an indie label. Like that dude made a shit ton of money just on one album.
Good for him. We should all be so lucky.
Man. R2, next time you're in Chicago, we'll record you at some mic and then that'll sell 10 million copies.
Oh, yeah, sure. I would love to. I mean, next time I'm in Chicago, you mean the first time I'm in Chicago.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you haven't touched that bean.
Airport. I do want to touch that bean. Speaking of touching beans, we got to get these characters together.
Okay, wowzers.
So...
she's in the shower.
Well, they need to... What happens in these rom-coms is like they have to get forced together. Like they have to be forced to work together for some reason.
A school convention, or the dad is hearing about, a great dating places is the holiday social at the school. There's a lot of divorced mothers and fathers there. So the dad's like, hey, you want to come over here? I'm trying to pick up some PTA poo-tang.
Okay, we got this. So they're going to have a big holiday singles social at the school where the friend works because the friend also does that dating podcast.
Yes.
And they're going to want to get, what they're going to end up doing is calling, Daniel Tosh in to guest on this very special live dating event episode. That's what they'll end up doing because it's like not going to work. Maybe they had an original guest and it fell through. That happens a lot. So maybe Lynn had reached out to, who's like a celebrity that they would like never be able to get, but like, who else is from Florida? Oh my God, Carrot Top. So they reach out to Carrot Top. They're like, Carrot Top's gonna come.
In this Venn diagram, Daniel Tosh, famously known for not doing podcasts, Carrot Top, famously known for like, if it can work with his schedule, he's fine with it.
Yeah.
Also, why would Carrot Top, he's the longest running single act in Las Vegas that does comedy. Why is he in Florida, even for the holidays?
Well, he went to Cocoa High School in Cocoa, Florida, which was the rival high school to my high school, Rockledge.
Well, still, maybe that's why him and Tosh are such good friends.
Are they buds?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Good for them.
You got to watch Tosh.0, dude, just like you need to watch Happy Death Day.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could probably stand to not watch Tosh.0. But, you know, so, okay, we got to get this together because we have them. He hears the podcast and he's kind of impressed. How are we going to get to the point where they actually need to work together?
So it's the dad and the mom. It's not I don't think it should be a singles event at the school. It's just a community event that happens to have singles that you can date there. That I don't,
Okay.
It feels weird that a school would be like, yeah,
I know.
mothers
That's
and
why I thought it was
fathers,
funny.
come swing. They're like talking and like maybe the only seats there available are, oh, we're going to have to sit together as both families and this friend of theirs, Chris.
Okay, so this isn't the end of movie. This is like there's an event right in the middle.
Yes, yeah.
Where they're, okay.
So kind of like in the most colorful time of the year about that dude who's colorblind, there's something like this where they test his eyesight and he's like, or they're testing everyone else's eyesight. It's real fucked up and wildly entertaining, but they go there and they sit down and she's like, oh yeah, a Carrot Top fell through and we're trying to find like another big guest. And then the dad says, oh, you know a lot of like big dudes in showbiz, Mr. Clearwater. And he's like, yeah, but not right, because he can't really call on those people now.
Yeah.
Also, even if he were still in radio, this is the rival shit. This is podcasting, Scott Doughboy. And she's also like, oh, he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to. And or maybe she's like, yeah, you probably couldn't even get like Daniel Tosh on ours. And then he like takes that as like, okay, yeah.
He's like, wait a second.
Yeah, he could.
Daniel might actually be in town right now. Let me give him a text real quick. And then he actually gets Daniel in. And you could tell he actually wanted to because he sees how like upset Lynn is about this guest falling through. And then when Daniel Tosh gets there and does it, she's like, Leon, thank you so much. Like, I don't know how I could repay. I know you didn't want to do this. I don't know how to repay you. And she like gives him a big hug and he gets kind of like flustered.
Also, he should be upset. He starts being upset with her of, why did you call on Carrot Top? He's from our rival school. Like, what are you talking about?
And she's like, we're all a community. I don't understand.
Someone who doesn't know sports, that's their attitude about it.
Yeah.
So then he starts setting it up, and then they have to start collaborating. He comes into the cafe. He's like testing mics out with her, and he's like, man, you did a really great job. And this is when they start thinking back on their past of being in this tiny studio in a school. And I think how this should end is that the podcast network does so great that they're still able to then do like an annex where it's like the final scene will be them sitting in what looks like their studio. It says like a fresh pot
of coffee. Yeah, fresh pot of coffee.
Podcast network, and they're like, oh man, that's a great episode. Then as it like pans out and like goes through the door, they're in the school, and that's because it's like brought to you by, like, this was made possible by these two alumni donors.
Oh, and it'll be Daniel Tosh and
what? No, it's the two. It's the fucking couple.
I know. I'm kidding. So at the end, like, they do expand the cafe and they bring the podcast equipment to the school, and now the the podcast network is out of the school.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, there's an annex now. Like, they're doing so well that they can keep the cafe.
Oh, they have a secondary. Okay.
Yeah, and they were still able to donate, like, funds to help create, like, the AV club to, like, really blow it out.
Okay, so let me get this straight. In the middle of the movie, they end up sitting together at this community event at the school.
Yeah, I think this is, like, end of Act 1.
Yeah. So, and that's where, this isn't where Carrot Top wasn't going to be here, or was he going to be there?
No, he wasn't going to be here.
Right. So this is that they're going to do like an Christmas special podcast episode.
Yes.
For the community. And it was supposed to be Carrot Top. And when she's at the event, this is when she finds out that he can't make it. Mm-hmm. And she's going to have to find someone new. And it was going to be such a big event for the podcast network, and that she's freaking out. She kind of baits Leon, and Leon is like, rises to it, and is like, I could get Daniel Tosh.
Yeah.
But he's like, but in order to get him, I got to make sure this stuff is up to snuff. Like, I got to see what you're working with. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
I can't have him come into some rinky-dink podcast network. Come on, guys, get to radio already. She's like, Jesus, man. Like, we came up together, or then, like, it flashes to that, and he's like, wow, like, this is really good. And she's like, yeah, man, we both had the same trajectory. I know just as much as you do about this stuff. I thought you'd, even though our paths went different ways, and, like, you seemed to start, you hated what I guess I became, I would at least hope you'd still, like, give me the respect, or, like, the admiration that I know what I'm doing. And he's like, wait, I don't hate you. And this is like when it starts to, like, I had to leave because of my mom. It wasn't because of you. And she's like, oh, okay. And I think this is like, if we're doing a 60-minute movie, that's the halfway mark, and this is the next half. So even like, it'll be them rekindling their relationship. And then at Daniel Tosh, like, the recording happens, and, like, Scrooge Clearwater, he shows up and he's like, hey man, like, you proved that you could get, like, Scott Doughboy. Like, I mean, well, maybe not Scott Doughboy, but Daniel Tosh famously doesn't do podcasts. So maybe we can get him on our network. And she overhears that, and she's like, oh, you just wanted to always branch this off into another radio thing. And then he ends up having to say, like, no, dude, like, I was fired from that. I was doing this because, like, I'm passionate about it. And, like, you showed me that I don't need to be in some corporate structure to do it. I can be here with you. And I think that's how the next half should fall out.
Yeah, he'll be like, there's more important than making the big bucks in radio. Things more important. So yeah, she, like, overhears this, or, like, maybe, he comes to town. She happens to overhear this. I love this happens in Hallmark rom-coms all the time. Someone just overhears something kind of out of context, and the whole rest of the movie is about that misunderstanding. So yeah, she overhears this, but she doesn't hear the part where he's like, that's not what I'm into anymore. Like, you can't control me like this, to Mr. Clearwater.
You fired me and then in front of me counted the wages that you saved.
Right. But meanwhile, she's like, she goes back to her grandpa and her great grandpa, and she's like, and her mom, who's the only mom in town. And she's like, I never should have trusted him. I knew he's ready to leave at the drop of a hat, just like he was in high school. I knew it wasn't just his mom. Like, maybe it's just too hard for him to be here, and I shouldn't have put any stock in this relationship. And she gets, like, really bummed out about it. And this is, like, right before the big podcast event.
Yeah. So in between that, as they're rekindling their relationship, we need them to start growing more in love through what, R2 Shelby 2?
Podcasting.
Through a montage.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say, that's
okay.
So when they're setting stuff up in the podcast room, I figured they would do a montage. So I was thinking, like, maybe she's been having trouble, like, all her different little podcasts keep trying to come use the studio at the same time. She doesn't have, like, a good booking system. Maybe the room's kind of messy. Like, everything works really well. and there's a great system, but clearly she just doesn't have enough time to manage this all on her own. So I think they should have a montage of them like cleaning up the area, getting like a little calendar and, session sign up thing in place. And he's like helping her do this.
Yeah, I think because like he's from radio, like that's a scheduling is you got to have that down.
Right.
So I think like he's showing her Excel and she's like, oh. And then she's like, well, I can't afford that. And he's like, well, what about open offices, Calc? And she's like, oh, this looks nice. So
Google Sheets.
Yeah, that too. And I guess I should have just said Google Sheets. So he's doing that and they're like having a great time and they end up like driving past the high school. And then he says, oh man, should we go in? And she's like, you really want to? And he's like, yeah, let's try it. And then they go into like their old AV area and it's like very warm. It has a nice room tone to it. It's mahogany walls and they're just like talking and they like turn on mics. Actually, one thing I would like him to do is like in the montage is like, him going cool pita bread sandwiches into the pop filter, making sure the plosives are under control. They're doing like all these like cute things with mic tests.
I have an idea. So maybe they go to the AV club at the high school to check out their old equipment, and they used to record in this tiny little janitor closet.
Okay.
So they go and they're like, oh, let's test this old equipment. And they're in the tiny little janitor closet, and they're both talking into like one mic, doing a little goofy bit. And they're like so close to each other, and they're like looking in each other's eyes over the microphone. And then something interrupts them before they can kiss, because that always happens.
Or they go into Kiss. I think this would be better. They go into Kiss, and it's a large cardioid mic, like one of the flat-looking ones that is has a dual sensor. Why can't I think of any of these words? On both sides of the mic, it picks up, so like you only need one microphone to get two people. And then like they get closer and closer, and like they go to kiss, but kiss the mic, and they're like, oh, and like it makes like a loud pop noise in their headphones.
Yeah. And they're like, oh God. And they're like, we gotta get out of here. And they're like kind of awkward about it. And they'll also talk about like, oh, so, maybe they had just talked about like whether they were single, is there anything of he's like, she'll be like, well, I've just been too busy with my cafe and podcast network. I haven't really thought about it. And he's like, he would talk about, people came and went, but no one ever really stuck,
He says like, oh, so like you don't have anything going on with that regular? And she's like, this Santa looking dude? No.
We do. Okay, so I was thinking one of them should have a kid. So either it would be her or it's like a nephew or something.
I think it's the
friend has a kid?
Or maybe she has, because the family's like so healthy, maybe she has a young uncle. Like,
okay.
The grandfather has like a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Okay, there we go. We'll throw him about. Oh, yeah, because he's going to end up also like creating a podcast with them, the superhero one, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, we can put that in too. Yeah.
I also do want to, when she's like, oh, do I love him? Oh, what's going on at the end? Like after overhearing the thing, she like plays a podcast like, oh, I have some editing to do, and it's them in that closet, and then like it gets to the kiss, and she's like, fuck, I do love him.
That's beautiful. So this is after she's overheard him take this call, and she's going home, and she's like, I'm just gonna throw myself back into work. That's what I always do, and that's better. That's what works for me. This is who I am. And so she starts editing the stuff, and she hears them together and is like, and it kind of changes her mind. And meanwhile, he's trying to get stuff going for this podcast network. Maybe he's trying to get stuff going for this podcast event with Daniel Tosh, and he already told off his boss. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't know that she's super upset at him.
Oh, well, no, I think he should know. Like, she says, like, hey, man, you only wanted, like, this, okay, like, to do that. And I think he should be, like, he's like, well, I guess I'm just going to do this event and call it quits. I'll go somewhere else. But he's listening to that same podcast because he's like, well, I need to edit as well. Like, they're not on the same page there. Like, all the recording stuff is scheduled out, but not the editing.
The editing, yeah.
He's starting to edit it, and he's like, do I love her? Like, thinking that. But before we can hear him think that, the dad comes in, and he's like in a robe and like a brandy glass, and he says, man, sucks to be you. And he's like, huh, what? He says, worst thing imaginable. You fell in love. And then he like walks out of the room, and he's like, oh, my dad's right for the first time in his life.
So then I think for them coming back together, we should have a nice big, like, people have to be rushing around. Maybe there's like traffic and like they're trying to get to some place because they have to confess their love to each other. But I'm thinking there has to be some big drama and big, like, you know, final act set piece kind of thing. So.
Well, isn't it Daniel Tosh?
Yeah, Daniel Tosh is our set piece. But what can be going wrong that we need them like rushing around and doing something crazy to make sure everything works out right?
Daniel Tosh, his dog jumped out of his arms and like ran away, and they need to find this dog.
Okay.
Daniel Tosh loves his dogs.
Okay, perfect. So we've got a Daniel Tosh dog jumps out of the limo while Daniel Tosh is driving through town.
And he's driving the limo.
So maybe it's outside the cafe.
His dog's in the back.
Yeah, so yes, he's transporting his dog in the limo. The dog has like water bowls and stuff in the back seat and like treats. The dog jumps out when they park at the cafe. And of course, Lynn is like, oh my God, Daniel, I'm so sorry. I'll be right back. And like she books it after the dog. She's running after this dog all through town. She's like pushing Christmas trees out of the way or whatever.
I thought you were going to say children, but thank you.
And children. Daniel maybe texts Leon and is like, yo, bad news. My dog got out. And some cafe bitch is chasing it all over town.
I would also like when we see Daniel Tosh and he's driving and he's like, you know, in limo scenes, the limo driver's always like looking back and says like, hey, quit partying so hard back there. I think like it's set. This is a Daniel Tosh.0 sketch where he would be looking back and he would see his dog. It would look like it's partying and like, you know how you have like dog dishes, like water dish that it like stays full because you like fill the back of it. That's like shaped as a champagne glass. And he's like, hey, quit drinking the sauce back there. And he looks in the camera and says, it's just water. And then like the dog like poops and he's like, oh, you're one of those rock stars, are ya? And then he looks back and there's like 5 like
poodles.
Yeah, poodles with like bikinis covering their nipples. And he's like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to close this right now. And when he closes it, that's when the dog jumps out.
Yeah, okay, so he gets to the podcast studio and there's no dog in the back seat. Or there's just all the poodles and he's like, oh my God, where's my dog?
And they're so pregnant now.
They're all so pregnant. And maybe Santa, the regular, is like, if I were a dog, I'd go hang out at the fountain or whatever. And like, so she's like, oh my God, I'm going to go check there. And she's running to the fountain to try to get this dog. Meanwhile, Leon's going to come running the opposite direction. He's like, has anyone seen a dog? Has anyone seen a dog? It's really important, you know, and he's running around and then maybe they smack right into each other.
And then they're like, well, where could this like this rock star dog be? Like, what would a horny dog want? And they're like, oh my God, the school mascot. And then they like go and there's a mural of the mascot and the dog's just on the wall humping the wall.
The Titusville Terrier.
And they're like, oh, thank God. And then they like grab it and bring it back. And Tasha's like, hey, you guys really pulled through on this one.
They pick up the dog and it's still humping and they just carry it like straight armed out.
That's that YOLO shit, guys.
So they get together. They have their big... So maybe Daniel Tosh is there. He's got to record the podcast with the friend, right? Because it's for the dating podcast. Or are we going to have...
Well, it was for
Lynn,
the It Takes a Titus Village,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lynn will be talking to him. And maybe he'll say something about... Maybe he'll say something like really insightful about like love and community.
Which he does.
And she'll like look over at Leon and be like, yeah, I get it, you know? and he'll be like smiling back at her.
I think even before that, like he is hearing her like asking questions and like being very like professional. And he's like, fuck, man, she's my first love. And she just, in this art form that we do, she's killing it. Like she's a professional. She's so good. So he's already in love and like looking at her. And then when Daniel Tosh says that, she looks at him already making eye contact with her, and they meet and they're like, oh, we're in love. And maybe they both say that. And then Tasha's like, what's going, am I still on the show? Like, what is this going on?
And then we pull out of and we're slowly pulling out, and we just see Lynn and Leon staring at each other, and Daniel being like, guys, hello? Like, what the fuck? And we just keep pulling out from that until it fades out.
Yeah.
And then we cut to, so then we're back at like what you said. It's Lynn and Leon doing maybe like a debate podcast together. Like they're debating radio and podcasting or something. But then it becomes clear that they're not, that they're actually like very much in love, and they love to do that. And then they're in that little area in the
annex
of the AV club. And then, yeah, there it is. We did it.
That's a goddamn movie.
That's a goddamn movie.
As it's pulling out, we need to see like from Daniel saying, what's going on here? It like goes into the cafe, and like the dog needs to be humping something again.
Santa.
I was thinking Santa, but I'm like, maybe he's like, no amount of Christmas magic can get this dog off me.
Well, he's like, you remind me of Rudolph when he was young or something like that.
You remind me of Prancer.
You remind me of Prance
or
Vixen.
he just lists all of them. He reminds me of Donner, Blitzen, Prancer, Comet, Cupid when they were young.
Yeah, so he'll be like, you remind me of Dancer when he was young, and Prancer, and Comet, and Vixen, and
all
Cupid, and like all of them. That's funny.
And he's like, you what? Come to think of it, just like reindeers are very sensual.
Yeah. And then we get the last scene. This is fantastic. I was worried about writing that. I say this every time.
Yeah.
I'm always worried about breaking these things, and then we do fine.
This was my least worried about it, because I'm like, you've 200 weeks have watched a rom-com, and like these are very formulaic, and I think these movies fucking rule, especially the weirder they are or the like dumber they are, the better they are.
Yeah, and I think that while we're writing this script, we can add in a lot more jokes and bits. We have the freedom to do that since we have like a movie length thing that like, usually, you know me, I'm trying to make stuff as short as possible.
And I thought you were going to say also because we have 5 weeks to write it.
Hell yeah. This is going to be great.
So speaking on like bad rom-coms, I'm like, I love Hallmark. I love Fred Orlean Ray stuff. And David Dakota made one that I fucking loved. And David Dakota's one of my favorite full moon feature people. He did Dr. Alien and Shrieker, but now also did a talking cat. So
I've seen a talking cat.
Oh my, David Dakota rules, man. He's so fucking good. But there was a day that I'm like, okay, I have in this area, I have enough time to watch a full holiday rom-com. I'm going to get on Peacock, going to get on Roku, whatever, and watch one. Internet's out. And I'm like, fuck. So I look, Nicole has a huge selection of DVDs, but there's only one holiday rom-com. And I was like, I guess, you want to know, I'll watch this. But then I was like, I actually don't want to watch a good one. I chose not to watch The Holiday again because I'm like, no, I don't want a good one. That sucks.
I understand you completely, James. And that's part of the rom complex thing is like, you don't always want a good movie. And that's Hallmark. The whole thing about these is you're not meant to sit there and pay total attention to them.
Unless
it's on
you're
TV.
Stoned like I am.
Right. You know there's going to be commercial breaks. You're working around the house. You're making Christmas cookies. You're doing something else, or you're sitting with your family, you know, and you have this on the TV. That's like what rom-coms are about. They can't be too good or too entertaining because then people will sit and watch them, and you don't want that.
Nicole and I, because our both sides of family are coming during Thanksgiving week, so we just won't have any time to do Christmas decorations. So we just got stoned, put up decorations while having like 3 holiday movies on.
Hell yeah. Sounds great.
It was great.
And now we can add Christmas in the cans to that holiday movie rotation.
Oh, yeah. Because this Christmas episode is in the can.
That's right. We did it. We're amazing. James, I love you.
Back at ya. It's a brick and mortar podcast network.
Yeah, of course. We probably do too many episodes about podcasting, but it's a podcast, so fucking...
What do
people expect?
We've only done one, and then you tried to do another. I was like, we just did the Fairly Odd Parents one. We can't do it again. But we got away from the Muskegon of it all, which is even better because these Hallmark movies, guess what? They do not record, they do not film when snow is on the ground.
Oh, no, they don't.
Or where snow would ever be on the ground. So it being in Florida makes so much more sense.
Hell yeah. Well, if you want to hear more from me, check out the Rom Complex. I've done almost 200 episodes of rom-com discussion and relationship discussion. Check that out, the Rom Complex, where you find podcasts. You can also support us on patreon.com/the Rom Complex. If we get a couple more subscribers, that's another episode a month that James will edit for us.
And I desperately need it because I guess everywhere says I'm overqualified. I need to start lying on my resume.
Why don't they just hire an overqualified person?
It doesn't make sense. They're like, oh, well, if something could break big for him and he'd just leave real quick. No, just get me a job, okay? Fingers crossed I get more hours at Chicago Comics in December. But if you want to support, listen to my music under Marshland Monster, released an EP, single, or a full album every single month this year. The last one, I believe, will be Critters Pay for Loads, which R2 Shelby 2 is technically on.
I am! Oh my gosh, when does that come out?
Late December. Howard sent me his polished vocals for it, and I wrote mine. I'll read them to you after this episode. And then...
Hell yeah.
That'll be out at the end of December or early January. I'm recording Monday, so it's all dependent on when I can get things mixed and an album cover made. Also, head over to patreon.com/MLMpod, where for $5 a month, you get exclusive content every single Friday. It's great stuff. R2's been on there multiple times. It's a great time. This is December, so... We are doing For This Existed on Friday, or last Friday, technically, would have been Lil Corey and I discussing Ernest Saves Christmas.
Woo! I've never fully watched an Ernest movie.
Oh, dude, Ernest Scared Stupid is one of my favorite, not just Halloween movies, but one of my favorite movies. My mom and I would rent that all the time. It's so good.
Amazing.
Just watch the 4 ones that Disney put out because when they went straight to video, they start sucking.
Got it.
And we also have, what's it called? Monthly exclusive content. Last month, we put out our annual Blades Giving tradition. Joe and I discussing a Beyblade movie. This one, not good, but the conversation was nice. Went over to his house to record, brought the digital recorder, put up 2 mics, worked beautifully. And
amazing.
You get shout outs on every single free feed podcast when you're a $10 patron. So let's begin with those, starting with Steve F., Eric Berry of Ranger Command Power Hour, Alex Z, The Waz, Orion, Jordan B, The Chaos Witch, my Bickle brother in common law, Joshua Jakis, Steve Barnes of Sweet Child of Time, and Intro Void, my mother, the aforementioned womb in which I emerged, Lil Corey's BFF and former roommate, and just hung out with him last night on, recording night, Shane, that fed, twitch.tv/core winning. It's Corwin. Also, if this movie's gay, we watched a lot of rom-coms on that. It's a go-to for queer cinema. And finally, of Formulaic, a podcast in script writing, and The Rom Complex, a podcast in romance comedies. It's twitch.tv/R2Shelby2, R2Shelby2.
That's me. I've been Shelby.
And I've been James.
And this has been Formulaic.
Ooh, see you guys. Bye. We saved the community center.
Yay!
This has been a Marshland Media
and OK Owl production.
produced by me, James McCollum.
And me, Shelby Sweeterman.
For more content, please visit mlmpod.com.
Or OKOwl.com.
And for the best way to support this podcast, please visit patreon.com/MLMpod, where for $5 a month, you get exclusive content every single week. Thank you very much for listening. Oh,